So one thing we'll be talking about today is the evaluation framework, which kind of gives, the aim of that is to give some advice and guidance on how to monitor and how to keep track of your progress and record your project activities. So hopefully that'll be useful for people in terms of making sure that the reporting. So first of all, I'm Laura from Countryscape, and I'm here today with I've got colleagues Paul, Gemma and James from Countryscape as well, and also Fiona Fife from Fiona Fife Associates, who you may know from the landscape character assessment that she did. So as Andrew said, we are going to be doing the independent monitoring and evaluation of the scheme. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what evaluation is, and I know that many of you will probably do sort of monitoring and evaluation in your day-to-day jobs anyway, and your organisations may have their own processes and procedures. So we don't want you to see this as sort of another level of paperwork or extra work for you. The idea of the evaluation framework and our involvement is really to be there as a bit of support, guidance and advice, and to perhaps hopefully direct you to things that maybe you've not thought about in terms of monitoring some of your project activities. So there may be things that I say today that you think, well, I know that, I've been doing that for years, but just for the purposes of those people that perhaps are a bit new to this, we're kind of going to treat you all like you don't know anything a little bit, just for the first couple of minutes. So what is monitoring and evaluation? So really, we like to think of it in terms of sort of telling the story of your project or telling the story of the landscape partnership scheme. And with every story, you have a beginning, a middle and an end. So at that beginning, that's sort of your baseline, where you think about what you plan to achieve, what your aims and objectives are, who you're going to speak to, who you're going to involve, and what's the current situation in terms of your site or you know, your heritage asset. And then in the middle, there's the data collection. And for the landscape partnership scheme, there will be this sort of two levels of data collection. There's one where you will carry out as sort of delivery partners that day-to-day collection of how many people are attending your events and things like that. And then we will also, as part of our annual and final evaluations, do our own data collection where we speak to partners and volunteers to understand kind of the scheme as a whole, and how that's progressing. Then at the end, we have the analysis and the reporting. So that's looking at all the evidence you've collected and trying to understand what has worked well, what didn't work so well, and why. And it's not about pointing the finger at people if the project hasn't quite done what it set out to. Sometimes you know, projects like this end up looking very different to what they imagined it would at the start, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the monitoring is really just to kind of keep on track and to understand you know, where there might be potential issues, and to anticipate those before they become a big problem. So it's not a judgmental thing. It's one of the benefits of working in such a big partnership is that there's a wealth of knowledge and skills and people there that have potentially come across issues similar to yours before that can provide help and support. And it's also a way of being able to direct resources if required. So you will also produce your quarterly reports to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which will be Andrew kind of producing those, and I think you've already produced a few already. We will review those as part of our annual evaluations, as well as carrying out our own data collection and analysis. We'll do interviews, and when restrictions allow, hopefully we'll be able to get over there and visit some sites, and it will be great if there's particular points in a project where maybe there's a good event that you think it would be useful for us to come along to, where we could talk to volunteers or get some really good photographs or filming and things like that. So that will be our role, will be to support you in your data collection, and then to do kind of our own to understand the scheme as a whole. So why carry out monitoring and evaluation? Probably the main reason is that it's a requirement of the funder. So that you don't get your final payment until you've produced your evaluation and submitted your evaluation report. So that's obviously a really big incentive to make sure that this is done. But it is also, as I said before, it's about sort of checking as you go along that you are achieving what you set out to achieve. And as we said, sometimes there are problems and there are issues, and it's good to pick up on those straight away, really. And it's a chance as well to kind of share what you are doing well. It's not just about problems and things that are going wrong, but it's a chance to say, actually, look at this really good work we're doing. And I often think with communities, especially, particularly if there's a bit of apathy, that once they start seeing things happening, they start to want to get involved, and other partners as well might want to get involved. So it's a really good way of celebrating what you're doing, and sharing the knowledge that you're getting with other partnerships, which is really important as well. Other similar schemes that are going ahead, you know, they can learn from you. And at the end of the final evaluation, we will be producing a celebration film as well as a report. So the evaluation it's a chance to try and tap into other funding in the future as well. It's a chance to say, look at what we can achieve. It might be that as part of the forward plan that is done, you know, the evaluation is a really good way of sort of saying, this is what the partnership can achieve together, and we can get, you know, to help you to get some more funding either for your site or for the partnership as a whole. So for us, our evaluation methodology that we put together in our proposal has got 4 stages, and at the moment we're sort of in the first stage. We've reviewed a lot of the scheme's documents, your delivery plans. We carried out the online questionnaire as well, which a lot of people filled out, so thank you. And we've produced an evaluation framework, which we'll go into in a little bit more detail later on. So the next bit really is for you to go on and do your day-to-day data collection. We will do our first annual evaluation in August, or we'll start looking at that in August, where we will sort of contact people again to do surveys, questionnaires, interviews, and things like that. So yes, we've got the ongoing review over the 5 years. So we will regularly review your monitoring data, so your quarterly reports. And then at the end of the 5 years, we'll have the final evaluation and a celebration film. And the evaluation report will support a biosphere reserve application, which Fiona is going to just talk a little bit about now, about the biosphere reserves.
Thank you, Laura. So a very quick introduction. I'm Fiona Fife. I regularly work with Countryscape on a wide variety of projects. I'm a landscape architect and a landscape archaeologist, and I'm particularly interested in protected landscapes. I know the Binevenagh and coastal lowlands area quite well, as I did the landscape character assessment back in 2018 for the development phase. So it's great to be able to team up on this one. So just really briefly, what is a biosphere reserve? Well, it's a UNESCO designation, and their definition is that they're learning places for sustainable development. So basically, they're sites almost for testing different approaches for understanding the changes and interactions between social and ecological systems, so between people and the environment, basically. And the idea is that they provide local solutions to global challenges, including the management of biodiversity. And there are 714 reserves in 129 different countries in all inhabited continents. So it's a real global mission, if you like. Then the important thing to note, though, is that they're not just about wildlife or biodiversity. They're also about people. and the interactions between the two. And there are a number of reasons why the Binevenagh and coastal lowlands area could be a biosphere reserve. One of them is that you have, as you know probably better than me, the most extraordinary range of landscapes and ecological habitats within this tiny area, right from coastal to alpine, as a result of the combination of location and geology and the coastal and the geomorphological process. It's a brilliant example of all these different things that exist in one area. When I was there, I felt like I was almost walking through like a living geography textbook, that you could just stand somewhere and just see all these processes happening in front of you, and how much sense it all made, that you could see the geology, you could see the formation of the sand dunes and all the rest of it. So it's a very exciting place for that. It's got rare plants, and some are at the extremes of their ranges. But on top of all those things, it's also a landscape where people live and work and visit. And so it's accessible and it's valued. And that's the reason why these interactions between people and ecology is such a good fit. In terms of benefits, there isn't a sort of huge financial gain from it. It's not something like that, but what it gives you is the international recognition for the area's outstanding and rare diversity of its habitats. And it encourages the involvement of local communities and stakeholders to integrate the three main biosphere functions, which they list as being the conservation of biodiversity and cultural diversity, the economic development that's socioculturally and economically sustainable, and also logistical support and research and monitoring and education and training that comes with that. Plus, of course, it gives you this long-term recognition of the area. Obviously, landscape partnerships don't go on forever, but this is a longer-term future thing. However, the application for becoming a biosphere reserve is quite complex. It's quite a long form. They want a lot of information in fairly precise formats. And so part of our role is to make sure that the information that's collected through the monitoring process is also suitable for supporting the biosphere reserve application where appropriate. And that's why we're looking at this from the very, very beginning of the process to make sure that what we've got at the end is what we need. So I think that's all to say about the biosphere for now, and I'll hand back to Laura.
Thank you, Fiona. I'll just very briefly go through the evaluation framework and then see if anybody's got any questions. I think you've all seen a copy of this. Don't worry if you haven't read it or you haven't read it fully at the moment. You can obviously read it at your leisure after the workshop. What's important to say about the framework is we've really tried to write it as guidance and support. So it's not a structured process that you necessarily need to follow, because we're aware that there are organisations that have their own processes, and we don't want it to be anything that's too onerous. So it is something that you can dip in and out of and use it for your own sort of needs, use the bits that are most relevant to you. I'll go through some of the key things in it that might be most useful. Now, I'm not going to go through it all in detail, but you don't need to understand it all. Just it's just there as a handbook, really, as sort of some guidance and support. But the aims, what it does aim to do, is to give you some guidance on the information that is needed to be measured in order to prove that you're delivering the lottery's outcomes. How to collect that information, so it provides some information on the sorts of methods you might use, how frequently you might use them, how to analyse those results and how we will be reporting the evaluation results. This is a very sort of brief kind of evaluation process. So there's those sort of 3 stages of developing the baseline, which much of this has already been done in terms of you producing your delivery plans. You already know what you are hoping to achieve, what your aims and outcomes are going to be, who you're going to involve. But developing the baseline also involves what's the current state of the landscape or of your heritage. Who is currently engaged in your project, and who might you want to engage in the future. We then go on to the data collection in order to monitor whether you are achieving those aims or not. And that's kind of in those two levels of your data collection, and then the collection that we will be doing. And then we'll have an annual evaluation where we will look at what's working well, what's not working so well, and that will be both in terms of delivery and also how the partnership is working together. And then we will produce some recommendations for the remainder of the scheme. Then the final evaluation will be something that's written very positively to celebrate everything that the scheme's achieved, but to also you know, look at what lessons have been learned and what that sharing information, what information we can share with other partnerships to help them to implement similar schemes. So at the very start, in the baseline, it's important to look at who you're going to engage with. One of the key lottery outcomes is about involving a wider range of people in heritage. So it's important to look at who is currently involved, who are you currently engaging with. Is it older people? Is it schools? And who else do you want to engage in your project? So the framework gives some ideas of how you might engage people. I won't go into them all. I'm sure you're kind of all aware of a lot of this. But it's, you know, you might want to involve volunteers in conservation management, but then you might want to do something a little bit more creative with young families in terms of, you know, doing living history or reenactments, that kind of thing, looking at doing trails or photography projects. So they're just some ideas to think about. The framework also looks at how to collect the data, and one of the things it does is sort of talks about some of the terminology that's often used. And one thing that can sometimes get a bit confused is the difference between outputs and outcomes. So an output is the actual activities or the services that you are going to provide in order to achieve your aims. So it might be delivering 3 community events, or producing 500 leaflets or 6 interpretation panels or something like that. And then the outcomes are the changes that have happened as a result of that, or the difference you have made as a result of that. So that could be that people have gained new skills. It may be that after a training course, somebody's gone on to gain employment, or that more people understand their local heritage. And we then have quantitative data, which is often what people get caught up in, and that's the numbers. So it can sometimes become the focus and of, you know, how many people have you involved, the area of land you've improved, or how many events you've delivered. And what is often forgotten is the qualitative data, which is the understanding the story, and that's helping you to understand the outcomes of the activities. So it's the things like a child saying, "Oh, this is great. I never knew this was here," or like I say, somebody going on to get a job because of a training course that they've carried out, or young people that are no longer getting up to mischief because they've been involved in something positive. So that's the qualitative data, which is often gathered through things like feedback forms, or just anecdotes that you hear during an event, which can be captured, you know, through recording or filming, or it might be a nice photograph of kids playing together in a new play area or something like that. The framework also talks about demographics, so understanding who you are engaging, and it gives a little bit of guidance on the sorts of information you might want to collect. So in terms of age, gender, ethnicity, and things like that. And there's also information about data protection and handling personal information, which organisations have probably got their own processes for. But it's important in a big partnership like this that you may be going and advertising your project as your particular organisation. But it's important that people understand that if they give contact information, that's going to be used as part of the wider landscape partnership scheme as well. So it could be just something as simple as making sure you include the logo of the landscape partnership scheme and a sentence saying this information will be used by the Binevenagh Landscape Partnership Scheme, and as well as your own organisation. So there's some more information in the framework that might be useful. These are the 9 National Lottery Heritage Fund outcomes, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and I think all your delivery plans pick out which of these you are hoping to deliver. The lottery have since the pandemic, they've kind of changed their priorities a little bit, and I obviously appreciate your scheme, your bid went in before the pandemic, but it's perhaps just important to look at kind of how they have reprioritised them. So they now have that first outcome is now a mandatory outcome that all schemes need to deliver. So it's not necessarily your particular project, but the scheme as a whole needs to kind of deliver on that, which is a wider range of people will be involved in heritage. So we're going to look in a little bit more detail in one of the activities later at just 3 of these, because there's obviously 9 is quite a lot and we've not got the time to kind of look at them all today, but just to have a look at kind of what sort of information we might need in order to evidence that that's being delivered. So the other we will be looking at will be people will have greater well-being, and the local area will be a better place to live, work and visit. But that's not to say the others aren't important, it's just those they're the ones that we're going to look at today to give an idea really of the sort of information that we might be able to collect to evidence those. This is perhaps one of the most important templates that we have in the evaluation framework. You may already be using something similar to this. One thing that I know when I've delivered projects before, you can often leave your adding up until the last minute when somebody rings you and says you need to let me know all your figures for what you've done this quarter, and you look back through your diary and all your attendance sheets and things, and you have to add it up. So this is something which we hope people will do on a regular basis and have as part of their project management, to look at recording the activities that you carried out. So it's just the date, the type of activity that you did, a bit of a description, what the location is, who the officer was in case somebody needs to go back and get some more information, the type of evidence you've got, so an attendance sheet or a feedback form. So this example is looking at an archaeology event, so you might get a feedback form at the end and get contact details of people. How many people have been involved, area of land improved, so number of volunteer hours, and then any other information that might be useful. So you might have produced a booklet before the event for volunteers, or it might be that you want to include in there a good quote that you got off somebody, or you know, that you've got some really good photographs of the event or something like that. So it's just there then for Andrew or us to look at, and really clearly then we can see, you know, what evidence you've got, and if the lottery ever say, you know, they want to see something in particular, then it's all documented. But again, if you already are using something like this, then that's great, and if not, it's there as an example for you to use. The framework, the evaluation document also has some fact sheets and some templates. So it provides some guidance on the different techniques that you might use to collect information. Again, you may already have used many of these things before, such as feedback forms, questionnaires. It provides advice on the sorts of questions you might want to ask, depending on the circumstance that you're using it in, as well as interviews. If you've got a trainee programme, you might want to get them to complete a trainee journal or something like that, and also about how to produce case studies. We've got some information there on monitoring landscape change, such as using fixed point photography, citizen science, recording things in a GIS database, such as area of land improved or where new trails are. And then there's some templates as well, which you may find useful if you've not got one already, for volunteer timesheet, attendance sheet, feedback form, and also for producing a case study, which can be produced at the end of your project or after a particular event or something, and that can then be something that is put in with the quarterly reports to the lottery, and also something really useful for the annual evaluations. This is
Can you I'm sorry, I've
yeah.
got a harbour master waving fevers
Okay.
to let this big boat in. But look, thank you for that. I will come back to you
Yeah,
later on. I'll watch the rest of it. So thanks for your input so far.
that's
Thanks.
okay. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So this is just my last slide now before we get on to some of the activities. So it might not be very clear on the screen, but this is in the document, and it just gives an idea of the sorts of monitoring techniques you can use for different types of outputs or different types of activities that you'll be delivering. So across the top, you've got the different activities. So we've got sort of habitat management, water retention, events, community engagement, creating digital resources like a website or something like that. And then it's down the side here, it shows the different techniques that you might use. Now, this isn't necessarily the only things that exist, and there might be other things that you find are useful monitoring techniques for things you're delivering, but this is, I suppose it's just a starting point really. And it may be that there is a particular activity or output that you want to monitor and you're not sure how to do it, and perhaps these don't help, and we are obviously here to help give you advice or guidance or point you in the direction of something that might be useful to help you monitor different things that might not be included here. But this is just a starting point really to show which techniques might help with which types of activity. So that's me finished talking at you for a while. Has anybody got any particular questions before I pass over to Paul to do the workshop activity? No? Okay, Paul.
Cheers, Laura. Hi folks, yes, I'm Paul. I'm one of Laura's colleagues working on the team at Countryscape, working on the evaluation. So it's a lot to take in, as you can see, but as Laura said at the start, it really comes down to just sort of, I say just, but it's basically form filling. It's filling in some templates as you go along to make sure you record things as you go, not leaving all that till the end at the reporting period and kind of getting your homework done early, which I know we all find challenging to do, but it's really key, and it will make your life so much easier if you kind of build this recording into your sort of daily work rather than sort of having a panic, you know, on Sunday night to get your homework done. And you know, we're here to support all this. So at any point throughout, you know, the next few years of the project, if you're not sure about something or if you need help with any of this, that's our role, is to help you do that. So we're very much on your side. It's not kind of a judgmental thing, and again, it's something Laura mentioned. So we're not here sort of sitting on your shoulders, you know, checking what you're doing. It's the NLHF are actually fine if projects don't work out the way we thought they would. What they're more interested in is learning from why projects might not go to plan, and that can be good and bad. Sometimes projects go off the rails in ways we didn't expect, and there are challenges. Sometimes projects actually really fly in ways we never expected, and they're interested to hear that as well. So don't at any point feel like we're sort of judging you or, you know, looking over your shoulders as we go through the evaluation. It's just a way of, you know, sharing your learnings with other projects. What we want to do, we just want to hear from you a little bit, because this is the first time we've met some of you, and it might be the first time you've met each other. So we'd like to give you all just 1 minute, which might be tricky. I'll make sure you try and stick to this. Just 1 minute, just to tell us a bit about your project and what you broadly want to achieve with it. What I'll do is I'll just pick you at random from whoever's at the top of my screen. I know some of you might be from the same project, So if one of your colleagues has already spoken about your project, then you can just sort of say hi and skip over to the next person. So let's see who I've got first. So I've got Ben Core. Hi Ben, if you can just unmute yourself and in 1 minute tell us about your project and what you aim to achieve with it.
Okay, I'm on the board vis-a-vis Castle Rock Community Association. Castle Rock is a main settlement within the project area. We're a seaside village with a beautiful beach, sand dunes, access along the River Bann, and that's to the east. And to the west, we have the moorlands, downhill estate, Musselton Temple, downhill forest. So one of our main projects is a series of 2 circular walks and 1 linear walk, which will take people across that sort of landscape, that mixture of moorland, forest, National Trust estate, beach, and sand dunes, and also through the village, depicting or bringing to life the history of the village, how the village came about, very much through the creation of the railway. The railway company offered grants and inducements for people to build houses, and that's how it sort of came about. And we also keen to record how the village has evolved and is evolving, and that how can that be maybe linked to some form of a photographic history, but also to a way of bringing to life the history of the village to people, whether they be residents or visitors to the village.
Cheers, Ben. That was a bit of a West Coast minute there, but I'll let you have it. That was very interesting. It sounds like a good project. Thanks very much. Okay. Who's next on the list? I've got Kevin. Hi, Kevin. If you can unmute yourself, tell us about your project.
Okay. My name is Kevin Wilson. I work for an organisation called the Lochs Agency, and we're in the project as a strategic partner as well too, and have particular interest in some of the projects, not all. But one of the particular projects would be the Curly Burn project, which is a small river stream within the project area. So we're particularly, Lochs Agency is a fisheries management organisation, and we also have an interest in as well too in marine tourism and really engagement with people and the landscape and the water. So the Curly Burn care scheme is looking at the eradication of invasive species, improvement in water quality, looking at some tree planting and some in-channel habitat improvements. So some of our stakeholders would be anglers as well as the science community. So that would be our particular interest.
That's good. That's Kevin. Yeah, we've been involved in a similar project up in Lake District a number of years ago. That sounds good. Graham, you're next on the list. Graham Thompson. If you can unmute yourself, Graham, tell us a bit about your project.
Hello, I'm Graham Thompson. I am also a board member of the Landscape Partnership Board. I represent Coast and Glens Heritage Trust, so I work with the core team of the Landscape Partnership team, providing support and input from as a corporate basis. So we are involved in all of the projects, but the detail of the projects is much better said by those who are actually working on the ground.
Cheers, Graham. Thanks. I'll keep going. Malcolm, if you can unmute yourself, tell us a bit about your project.
Hello, excuse me, I'm Malcolm McClenaghan. I'm a governor of McGilligan Prison, which is located within the site. It's a large industrial site with a large concrete wall around the outside. Very great on the main route down to the ferry, which crosses over to McGilligan, or from McGilligan Point to Greencastle. So very early stages. We're planning to manage the ground with wildflowers and grow plants on behalf of the Woodland Trust, which will then be planted out in Binevenagh Forest or Binevenagh Mountain area, and manage that with the support of rare breeds animals, i.e. we currently have Teeswater sheep within the prison, and we're hoping to purchase Dexter Kettle, which will manage the grounds on the outside for us.
That sounds good. Interesting. Thanks, Malcolm. Betty, you're next. Next, you've got some IT support there as well. I'll come back to you if you want. If you
No, find it. So did Betty and Matt Ferguson from Roe Valley Ancestral Researchers. We have 5 projects, a major one being Farlow Wood and Sampson's Tower. So opening that to the public, it's 12 acres and with a folly on it. So that's a major tourism one for us. 2 databases being created by other members, one for sunken ships around the Lough Foyle and the coastal area, and the other for World War participants, which include not just serving men, but also the outskirts of nurses and those who collected, everybody involved. Tour guide leaflets to be prepared, and book on local myths, legends and poems. So we're a busy lot.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
Melissa, you're next.
Hi, so I'm actually the outdoor recreation project officer for Binevenagh team. So I think the way I kind of see the project is I'm a facilitator for these stakeholders. I hope to collaborate with them and deliver the 4 major recreation projects that we have, which cover a wide range of increasing access, development of trails, like Ben said earlier, some community trails as well, interpretive aspects, and outdoor recreational training as well. So I'm here as a hopefully collaborator and deliver.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Collaborator and conspirator, sounds good. Emma, you're next.
Hello, I'm one of the archaeologists with the Historic Environment Division. I sit on the sort of the Defence Heritage Board, so that is where I'm interested in any of the projects that are happening around the Defence Heritage sites.
Super fast, thanks, Emma.
To the point.
That's good, that's fine. No, it's all right. Got some time left in your bank there from your minute. Neil, you're next. Neil Rainey.
I'm Neil, excuse me, and I'm a landscape architect with the Environment Agency in Northern Ireland. So I'm here to observe, really, but like Graham, I'm interested in all the projects, being a part funder of the partnership. So, you know, it's keeping my finger on the pulse of what's going on. And I was up recently with Andrew and had a look around a few of the projects. So it's just an oversee of everything, Paul.
Great. No, thanks, Neil.
Great. Cheers.
Nikki.
Hello, I'm Nikki. I'm a project manager at CCGHT, so I'm a bit in the same boat as Graham in that we're sort of here working along with the project, and I suppose have been working along with it for a while. The specific project I put into the coastal lowlands was the Biosphere Reserve research, and hopefully bid for that, thinking that it would be a good continued management opportunity for the area, and it would strengthen the AOMB management that we already do. So yeah, sort of involved and also on a back seat as well.
That's great, thanks, Nikki. We were involved in Scotland's first biosphere up in Galloway and Ayrshire, and that was a good project. And what we found from that is that the biosphere was a really good way of getting communities and also businesses involved in some of the work that local organisations were doing. It was a really powerful way to do that. So we've had a chat with Andrew and others about some of the lessons we learned from that. Eiling, sorry.
Hi, so I work for the Landscape Partnership as well. I'm one of 2 Natural Heritage Officers. Laura is also on this call. So kind of like Mel said, I'm sort of the facilitator for a lot of the partners here. So natural heritage projects are from the Curlyburn, like Kevin discussed, through to bog restoration. So we cover quite a large range of projects. So I'm hoping that we can deliver on those over the next 5 years.
Great, thanks very much. Who's next? Laura.
Yeah, I'm the other Natural Heritage Project Officer for the Binevenagh LPS, as Aisling said. So you've already heard from some of our partners like Malcolm and Kevin there. So we would organise and manage the Lochfoyle Sculpture Trail, setting up the tree and wildflower nursery at the prison and McGilligan allotments. We've also got a conservation grazing project at Annaley Wood to bring it back into favourable condition. And we've also got projects for the conservation of priority alpine species such as moss campion and promoting native species.
Great, thanks, Laura. Who's next? Sorry, I found a miss. Alexi.
Hi, yeah, I'm also working on a natural heritage project. I work for Ulster Wildlife, and our involvement is to run residential for young people at McGilligan Field Centre once a year, to get young people more connected with the landscape and the heritage of the Binevenagh area. So that's what we'll be doing, and we're working with Aisling and Laura, and also with the staff at McGilligan Field Centre on that. So yeah, just waiting for the COVID restrictions to be lifted to see if we can go ahead with the residential. We should hear today.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Alexi. You can take your dog for a walk after the workshop. Mike, you're next. Mike McClure.
Hi guys, Mike McClure from Sport Northern Ireland. So our interest is really in the whole outdoor sports, outdoor recreation developments within the Landscape Partnership, and I guess particularly sort of some of the training programs that are going to be run to connect more people into the landscape. But we have an interest overall, so it's fairly varied. Thanks.
Cheers, Mike. Charlie.
My name is Charlie Reid, and I'm a member of the Northwest Orange Terrain Club. There's sort of two elements to we'd hope from the project. The first was initially the idea that the project would make LiDAR imaging, ground imaging available, so we could improve the orienteering maps we have in the area. We have currently maps of the downhill area and the Binevenagh area. It subsequently has transpired that because of future plans centrally for provision of LiDAR in Northern Ireland to bring it in line with the rest of the UK in terms of publicly available LiDAR, that this probably isn't necessary, that if we had a couple of years we can do this, and it doesn't really make sense to do it in the short term. So the other side was that we were hoping that the project would improve access, create new areas where people could access recreationally, and those might be suitable for maps. And while we're still holding our breath on that, we're hoping that it will actually improve the area, and we can actually then enhance those areas by providing orienteering activities in the way we've always done. So at the moment we have no fixed, we're sort of watching carefully and hoping opportunities will arrive.
Thanks, Charlie. For those of you who might not know, LiDAR data is really interesting. It gives sort of like a super detailed view of the terrain, and you can sort of see down through forests. It's how I would sort of describe it in most simple way, but you can do some really interesting stuff for outdoor activities with that data. Thanks, Charlie. Who's next? Nick Wright. Hi, Nick.
Hi, folks. I work for Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council Museum Services. We have fingers in several pies as part of the Binevenagh Landscape Partnership Scheme. The project that I'm leading on myself is the Digital Heritage Hub. So we're looking at working with various community associations and other stakeholders to deliver training for things like oral histories and records management, artifact care, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Nick. Sounds interesting. Two left. Caroline.
Hi, Paul. Like Ben, I'm involved in the Castle Rock Trails project. So I think the harder sort of infrastructure aspects are going to be delivered by the Landscape Partnership themselves. And then we're more focused on the kind of softer elements, the information, all that background material. So I'll not take up my full minute, as Ben has described everything very eloquently.
It's fine. Someone's just set up a strimmer in next door, so I'm going to have to go and shut a window in a minute. But Richard, if we can hear from you, I'm just going to run and shut a window. Hold on.
I'll just wait for Paul to come back. The clock's not running.
Sorry, I didn't know if you. I was out the room for a second. Then Richard shutting the window.
No, sorry, I was waiting for you to come back, Paul.
Oh, thanks very much.
I'm Richard Gill. I'm Richard Gillen. I'm the Coast and Countryside Manager with Causeway Coast and Glensborough Council, who is the council is one of the main strategic partners within the project. I'm not going to list every single project that we're involved in because we would be here forever. Ultimately, we're here about the sustainability and making sure that this project does have a lifespan beyond the funding period from Heritage Lottery Fund. So I also chair the Outdoor Recreation Advisory Group and sit on the board. So we're involved in so many of these projects, particularly in the outdoor recreation end of things.
No, thanks, Richard. Yeah, it's an interesting mix of projects you got there. I think it's good. I mean, it's you know, it's the sort of stuff you'd expect from the Landscape Partnership Scheme, but I think there's also a bit of difference. There's a few ideas you've got going on with this scheme that we haven't encountered in other ones. So no, it sounds good. Thanks very much for that, folks, and thanks for keeping it brief. What we're going to do next, there's just a few interactive things we want to take you through, and it's just to get you and us thinking about some of the some different aspects of this evaluation. So we're going to use something called Mentimeter, which is an online, it's like an online tool for recording ideas. So my colleague James is just going to put a screen up in a second. And if you've got a mobile phone, a smartphone, or an iPad or a tablet, I recommend you use that. I find it a bit easier on my phone, but you can also just open up your web browser and do this on a website as well. I'll just let James put this slide on screen. Give us a sec. There we go. So if you go to menti.com and just type in that code, so you don't need to sign up to anything. It's not going to ask for your email. You won't get any spam on the back of this or anything like that. Just do it myself as well. You just put the number into the little box that you'll have on your screen. If you have any problems with this, you can message James. He's just put a message there in the chat with the details as well. But you can also use the chat on Zoom. If you look at the bottom of Zoom, there's a little button called chat with a speech bubble. So if you can't use Menti for any reason, you can put your comments in the chat there and we'll record that. So just to get started, just put your name in and which project you're working on. And that information is just going to us. It's not being shared with Menti. It's just so that we know who we've got here today and what the projects are. And then if you hit submit, that will take you onto the first page. Just give you a few minutes to get set up. But if you do have a smartphone, it's quite easy to do this on your phone. I'll get set up on there. James, maybe if you move to the first slide. If anyone's having problems, do let us know or ping a message in the chat. So the first question we're putting to you is, which of the lottery outcomes do you think your project is going to be able to deliver on? So you can read them on your screen and you can select which outcomes you think your project is going to contribute to. Most of them, I think they're all self-explanatory, so I won't read them all out in turn, but if you're not clear on any of the outcomes, just unmute yourself or ping a question to us. Graham's got a hand up. Graham, how can we help?
Yeah, from a Coast and Glens Heritage Trust perspective, we're involved in them all. So should we do it from a global project perspective, or should we leave this out, do you think?
That's a good question. Yeah, because you could probably tick most of them. I think given if you're involved sort of program-wide, I would suggest you skip this question, and it's more useful for us to hear from individual projects, I think.
Thank you.
All right. That's a good question. Thanks, Graham.
You're on mute, Paul.
I'm just talking to myself being muted, aren't I? Yeah. It was fascinating what I was saying. But,
I wasn't.
I'll have to.
Wasn't sure if you were talking to us or talking to yourself.
I was. So yeah, what I was saying. It's quite typical for the funding outcome to be quite a challenging one to deliver on. So that's looking normal there, and that the area has been improved as a place to live, work, or visit. That's good. We'd expect that. Skills development, that's interesting. That's not normally that high, so that's good. And they're all pretty positive. Economy is normally quite a challenging one to deliver on as well sometimes, so that's good. We've got some ambition there. So heritage is in better condition. Yeah, okay. I'll give you all a couple of minutes in case anyone else hasn't filled it in yet. Like I say, those of you that are working program wide, just skip this one. I've got some other activities you can get involved in a minute. So across the board, it looks like it's going to be keeping the National Lottery Home Fund pretty happy, really. The resilience around the funding organisation is an interesting one, because as part of this, you know, we're not just looking at the life of the Landscape Partnership Scheme, we're actually using this as a springboard to get this biosphere reserve set up. And we'll be looking at some funding options for that as well as part of this work. So we will be touching on that. That's great. Right, let's move on from that just to keep us on time. It's back on track. So, yeah, next slide, please. Oh, sorry, go back. Sorry, James. Sorry, yeah, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So, what we want to do is think about how we're going to collect information for three outcomes that are sometimes a bit challenging to address. Is that right, Laura? That's what we're doing on this next exercise, yeah. So
yes, it's just a chance to kind of start thinking about it. We don't need to come up with all the answers now, but you know, yeah, it's just that kind of getting thinking about it, really.
Yeah, so these next three are difficult to pick up. So let's start with the first one. If you just move on, James. Thanks. So how might we record or evidence having a wider range of people involved in heritage? Now, it sounds kind of straightforward, and by a wider range of people, what we're looking at is trying to broaden and reach people of all different ages. So it's from very young people to elderly people. It's people from different financial backgrounds. It's people of different ethnicity. It's trying to get a good gender balance through the work. And this isn't just sort of box ticking stuff. You know, it's trying to avoid what the lottery is trying to do here is just avoiding trying to sort of always meet the usual suspects. When you look at a lot of data from people like National Trust and others, you know, there is sort of a common demographic of sort of white middle-aged people who tend to engage in what we call heritage. And part of that, because I think heritage as a word is a bit badly communicated, it tends to make people think of it's just all about history and old stuff, when actually heritage is happening now. It's what we're doing today as much as what our ancestors were doing. So part of it's a communication issue, I think. But how can we go beyond the usual suspects and get more people and a different range of people involved in what we're doing? So you can type your answers and they'll appear as like post-it notes on the screen. And I'll pick up maybe a few of you to share your thoughts on this as we go. So yeah, that's interesting, a questionnaire so we can understand who our audiences are. That's good. Video blogs, yeah. Yeah, recording information when people book onto things, that's good. Yeah, that's good. It's all sensible stuff to sort of front load this into the evaluation form, and when we're collecting data, that's good. That's an interesting point about the timings. You know, weekday events tend to attract the same people, yeah. Mix of weekday, weekends, evenings as well can be useful for people who are working. That's it, keep them coming. We'll look at these and just check my timetable, make sure we're on track. Okay, yeah, we've got a little while to do this, that's fine.
Just to pick up, Paul, on the comment about asking, have you previously been involved in sort of your questionnaires? Because, you know, are you getting the same people that volunteer, or is it somebody that's only just become involved as a result of this project?
Yeah. And of course, you know, dealing with the usual suspects is great. We're not saying we don't want to do that at all. We really want to get everyone who's interested and mobilised involved in this, and that goes without saying. It's how we can try and go beyond that. And it's about prioritizing, really. The term sort of hard to reach groups gets used sometimes. And you know, that's because some groups are hard to reach and hard to get interested in projects like this. And you sometimes have to draw a line around how much effort and time you want to put into pursuing a particular group, when you might actually get a better return, a better impact by, you know, putting your attention elsewhere. So it's kind of choosing which audiences we want to get involved, and why we want to involve them as well. Is involvement in this project going to give that group a positive benefit in some way, and not doing it for just being tokenistic. Landowners, that's an important one. Yeah, that's they're often left out of the mix, and they're really key, particularly for sort of long-term sustainability, I think. Yeah, some nice ideas here. Smartphones, I think, yeah, using IT can be an interesting way to involve people. There's a project we're involved in, European project, where we're looking to use the Minecraft game, if you're familiar with that, to involve young people in environmental planning. There's all sorts of interesting stuff you can do there. I'm just going to pick a couple of you at random before we move on. Don't get too nervous as I scroll through the list. Ben, actually, I'll start with you at the top of my screen again. Hi, Ben. Any thoughts on how we might broaden the range of people involved in some of the walking trails, for instance?
By making the trails more accessible, you know, making people aware. You know, we've had a few issues here where the National Trust introduced charges for access from Castle Rock Village and then dropped them, and you know that they were perfectly entitled to do it, and then they dropped them, so that caused confusion. So just clean lines of communication in terms of what's available, and also to by maintaining the quality of the access, you know, the ongoing maintenance. Like clearly the pandemic and everything that's come about has put huge pressure on councils and national trusts and various organizations, and given that this project was conceived in its totality prior to the pandemic, is just making sure that we're going to be able to sustain the ongoing access. And that, you know, say if a farmer says, yeah, okay to something today, that, you know, he or she is committed to that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think with trails, we've learned, we did a lot of work with national trails, and they're very long routes, as you probably know, hundreds of miles in some cases. And we found that, and this might also appeal to what I think it was Charlie was talking about with the orienteering stuff. It's providing sort of shorter and sometimes circular routes for people who aren't so familiar with walking, because it sounds strange, but it can be sort of a bit intimidating and off-putting for some people if they're not familiar with walking, outdoor walking, you know. And so circular routes sort of from a village and back into that village of just a couple of miles, like those first routes that people can go out, they know they're not going to get lost, they're going to come back to the same place at the end of it, making that appealing. And, you know, things like, you know, we did a campaign around My First Mountains, which was like little routes up there, hills really, but it's like a family can go up to the top of a hill, get a great view, and they feel like they'll have climbed a mountain. And, you know, for kids, it's sort of thinking about different sort of levels of ability. Let's move on to the next question, because we've got to get through two more of these. So this is another outcome that sounds easy to measure, but it can be quite difficult, and that people will have greater well-being. Now, well-being, it relates to physical health, you know, are they fitter, healthier, and also mental health, you know, do they feel happier, less stressed, less anxious? How might we measure the project's impact on people's well-being? What can we do? What sort of metrics or ways of recording can we pick that up? So any ideas there? We do have our own ideas on this, by the way, that we'll share with you when the projects get started. It's just interesting to see what your thoughts are. Yeah, confidence is an important one, actually. Yeah, that people feel, particularly with sometimes heritage projects, people don't always feel like their views are going to be valued. A comment we often get from communities is, oh, well, I'm not an expert And you sometimes get that from more elderly people. Well, I'm not an expert, but then when you get talking to them, you find that actually they know loads about the local area, and they actually are experts. They just perhaps don't think they are. So that issue around confidence is important. People feel more confident to share their own knowledge. Yeah, workshops, that's good. Yeah, that sense of achievement, that's good. And again, bear in mind, we're thinking here about sort of people's health, happiness, mental well-being, things like that. Yeah, pride, that's interesting. When ownership and pride, that's a good point to make there. I think that's really crucial. That's going to be actually very important for the biosphere application. It's involving people in a way that you're not just sort of, again, it's not a tokenistic thing where you sort of ask people their opinion and then they don't necessarily see that opinion in the final outcome. It's actually giving people, you know, it's valuing what people put into the project so they could see their effort in the end results. Yeah, that's good. Some good ideas there.
The measuring the mental well-being before and after doing a trail or any activity,
yeah.
that's good. Just as simple as saying how
yeah.
you're feeling today, and
that's right.
Perhaps later on how, you know, how's that made you feel.
Yeah. Some techniques we use for this is often something that we pick up when Laura earlier was talking about quantitative and qualitative stuff. You can, for instance, have a question, you know, how happy do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, having completed this walk or whatever it might be, and you can record numbers. But quite often it's the qualitative data that gives you a best insight into well-being. It's how people describe things. And if you're familiar with things like word clouds, you can do sort of analysis of questionnaire responses and see which words get repeated often. So people might use the words like happy or, you know, enjoyable or space, relaxing, and you can sort of look at how frequently these words appear in some of the questionnaire results that you get. But this is often a thing where you can get this through talking to people and allowing people to sort of express their feelings. And social media can be a good way of doing that as well, you know. Allowing people to share photos and experiences could be good. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Points along a trail. I've seen that done well with there's a project where they had little stands that you can put your phone into and take a picture of the same view, and it captures lots of different pictures of the same view over the course of several years. And you can see how this view changes through the seasons, and people add a little note. That's a good idea. Yeah, word clouds, that's it. Got some good thoughts there. Let's move on to the next one. We've got one more to look at. So this is one that you all said was a key outcome and that a lot of the projects are going to deliver on this, but it's actually quite a difficult one to measure. You know, how do you put a number on whether a place is a better place to live, a better place to work, or a better place to visit? And this again comes down to, it's a bit like the well-being question. So how might we record or evidence this outcome? The visit one's perhaps the easiest one to tick off because you can have things like visitor surveys that record, you know, whether people had an enjoyable experience and things like that. The live and work is a bit more tricky, I think, but any thoughts on how we might do that? Told you it was a tricky one. There we go, it's the first comment. Yeah, that's nice. Images and videos, yeah. As we go through the project a bit later on, not today, but in subsequent meetings and things, we'll have a chat with you about using social media and video because it's so powerful. And we really encourage all of you to take videos, even if it's just on your phone, like you might do with friends and family, and encourage volunteers and participants to do the same, because those little snippets and things that often get lost otherwise can be a really great way of you know, showing people enjoying themselves and what the impact this project's having. Yeah, that's a good point about home working. Yeah, that's really interesting actually, how that links with the current situation we all live in. That's good. So you're all in the flow now. There's loads coming in. That's good. Yeah, speaking to partners and businesses. Yeah, quite often it's you know, particularly businesses that have been in an area for a long time. They don't often they get sort of homogenized to their environment. They're not often aware of some of the real core reasons as to why they benefit from it. But when you get chatting to people, particularly informally, you sometimes get these really great quotes as to why it's so great living and working in a landscape like that. And you sometimes get the best quotes actually of people who are quite new to the area, or people who have moved in, say, within the last 10 years, and get them talking about it, because sometimes those benefits are a bit more fresh to them than people who've lived there for generations. So it's getting a wide range of opinions can really help with that. Yeah, some good ideas there. That's good. Keep going. Just scroll down a bit. James, pick up that one. That's good. Yeah, the landscape character's intact. That's good. Fiona will like that. It is a great area. I mean, that's one of the, you're all very lucky actually to have such a fantastic landscape on your doorstep. Yeah, that's good. More resilience. And sometimes telling some of the stories of the landscape and its heritage can also help people connect to it in a new way. I know those of you that are interested in outdoor pursuits, it always helps when you're, you know, running or cycling or walking through an area that, you know, if you know just a little bit about it, it can sort of really improve your experience and make you feel a little bit more like you own the place, if you like, or you have that bit more of a connection with it. I know certainly when I get out into the hills, it's always nice to know a little bit about that landscape. That's great. Right, we'll move on because we want to make sure we finish on time. Thanks very much for that, folks. We've got one more Menti thing, so just down the Menti. This one's quite easy. So we've talked about some different methods and some different techniques that we'll be using through the evaluation. Laura's put together a list of just some example ones there, and you should have a little slider on your screen that you can move. And the question is, which of these activities might you or your volunteers like some support from us with? So if it's something you're already really familiar with, so say if you're already very familiar with interviewing, you can just score that low and say we don't need any support with that. If it's something that you're not so familiar with, and if it's something that you intend to do, then move it more to the right in terms of how much support you think you might need. And if it's kind of middling, you can leave the slider in the middle, and it will just give us a bit of an idea as to where you might need some support, because what we're going to do in time is run some training workshops, and we can do some training sessions on some of these topics. So, GIS, in case you don't know, that's Geographical Information Systems. So that's interactive maps, like Google Maps, for instance, is a GIS. That's interesting. The film photography can be a really good tool as well. We've got some resources we've used with other organisations, so we've got a good starting point with that actually. Just hover over community engagement for James, and we'll see where the distribution of votes is on that. Okay, yeah, so some people, so there's a real mix on that one. You can see the shape of the graph behind it. It's got the two humps. So the average is in the middle, but actually what that shows us is that some of you don't need any help with community engagement, but some of you actually want support with it. So that's interesting. Let's give you a couple of minutes to add a few more on those. And again, we'll follow up with you all about this. And there are probably some other techniques that we can get into in a bit of detail on. This is just for today, just to get a feel for it. Because we want to try and sort of boost your skills and capacity as much as those of the volunteers and other stakeholders as well. That's great. Thanks, folks. I think that's it for the Menti. I'll hand back to Laura for wrap up and see if we've got any final comments or questions. I know it's been a lot to take in today, but hopefully it's been a useful intro to you all. But Laura, have you got any points you want to raise? Or
yeah, just on the on that last question we've had, just to kind of just very quickly, if anybody's got any comments on kind of training or support, is it sort of formal training? Would you want to have a workshop on how to step by step how to do this, or is it the sort of support where actually just some kind of written guidance or templates is useful? Particularly, sort of there was there about community engagement. Maybe if we just talk about that one for now, is it different techniques to engage people, or is it, you know, would written information be useful, or is it that you would like something like this where we did a bit of a training workshop on how to engage people? Or has anyone got any comments?
Laura, I think what might be useful for everyone, on the basis of the results from the previous chart, obviously we can circulate that following the meeting, but then maybe have a question on each of those to see what the most appropriate medium would be for that. You know, it might be a case of a simple 1 hour workshop might work for some of those things, where it might actually have to be a physical workshop or tutorial, for example, for other things. So maybe if we can follow up with options for each one, then we can have a look as the project staff and the board as well, to see what we could offer out then to the partners.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. Yep.
Just to add, I think this notion of sort of training in these techniques as well, this is a really good opportunity to get some of your volunteers involved in this. And there's two benefits to that. The first one is it then sort of amplifies your own reach. If you've got volunteers who are also then savvy in how to collect some of this data and can collect film footage, know when to capture a quote from someone and that sort of stuff, it makes your lives easier and you'll collect much more information. And also it's a big tick in the box for skills and capacity building, because you can then evidence at the end of the project that actually volunteers have learned new skills in sort of community engagement, and that can help them in their own lives, and it makes those communities more resilient because they can then pass on that knowledge they've learned to other community activities outside of this project. So it's, when we do this training, I'd really encourage you to think about involving some of your volunteers and some of the stakeholders, if you like, rather than just yourselves as sort of the project leads.
Okay.
Go on, sorry, Laura.
No, so go on, Paul. I was
just going to say, has anyone got any other questions that they want to put to us whilst we're here? And don't worry if you don't. I know a lot of this is probably just sinking in, and things like the evaluation framework is something to probably read at your leisure. But does any of this not seem clear, or seem like it's going to be too much work, or anything that you're worried about? And it's a closed group, so do raise any. I know it's new.
I was just going to let people know, Paul, that obviously you guys are here for the duration now. You know, you guys are on board for the 5 years, and if they do need any sort of assistance or guidance, you know, all of the partners are used to working with myself and the staff team on a daily basis, and I'm sure on a daily basis I'm sort of the pain in everyone's arse that has to drive things forward. But that you guys are there independent, so that if they do want to maybe run stuff by you, to avail of that opportunity as well.
Yeah.
We'll try not to be a pain in the ass. We can be sometimes, but we'll do our best to be a. Yeah, I don't know what the opposite of a pain in the ass is, but yeah.
I wake up every morning, and that's my sole goal.
Can I just add something, Paul, if that's okay? Usually the primary purpose of evaluation during a funded exercise is for the primary partner to tell the primary funder how good they are. That's just the reality of how things work. And I've been involved in both sides of the fence when this has happened. This is obviously not like that. This is a very deep and detailed analysis of the work that's happening, the work that's going to happen, the work that doesn't happen for very good reasons. But I would like to see Heritage Lottery brought into this as close as possible as well, because the previous landscape partnership scheme that we were involved in was a very successful scheme. We used the local evaluators who were supposedly at the top of the game. They seem to fall by the wayside, and I think it'll be an excellent demonstration for the benefit of the partnership scheme, the benefit of those who are doing the evaluation to get close to the Heritage Lottery as well. So I think if there's one thing I sort of regret from this, is that our HLF assessor, Fiona Southern, is not sitting in watching what's happening, because she'd be incredibly impressed.
Thanks, Graham. That's a good point. We'll certainly be keeping NLHF very close to us as we go through this. But yeah, that's a good point. And you're right, I'll come to Ben in a moment, Ben, because I know you've got a question and Neil's got a hand up. You're right, it's a bit different to the other funding schemes that, you know, they really want, you really have to be careful to evidence the success. With NLHF, you know, within reason, they're quite relaxed about that. What they want is, they want to keep it very open, very transparent, and they want to learn from what this project experiences. So this is why we always say, if things aren't going to plan, that's not actually such a problem. As long as we notify the NLHF of that, and we can understand and learn from why things haven't gone to plan, that's actually really valuable. And let's not forget, you know, what we're trying to do here is use this as a springboard to get the biosphere up and running and flourishing at the end of this. So this is like a pilot, if you like. This is an opportunity to be a bit experimental, dare I say, get a few things wrong, learn from that, and then use that learning to make sure the biosphere is very robust as like a next phase. So it's, yeah, I think that openness will be important. Neil, did you want to address Graham's comment? Otherwise, I'm going to move to Ben.
Yeah, no, just very quickly on the back of what you've said, Paul and Graham. Yeah, it's about, you know, the legacy, and I'm glad to hear about the legacy of this, because I sit in another landscape partnership in Lough Erne in Northern Ireland. But it's all about who's going to manage the biosphere, you know, and it's just a commentary rather than a question. It's just, you know, it's these long-term issues. We do have a UNESCO geopark in Fermanagh that the council runs, and it's just who's going to manage this. Maybe it's too early in the process, you know, in terms of the biosphere.
It's a
far
topic
too early,
of the day, I think, but it is a big topic, and it's importantly who's going to help. We need to be able to fund it as well. So it's that two sides to that. But no, that is a key point, Neil. We will, I'm sure that will be addressed, but not in the next 6 minutes, unfortunately. But all right, good question though. Ben.
We've not really sort of touched on the forward plan today, but that is obviously something that Paul will be leading on that with Fiona. So
that's right.
We'll be in touch with that.
That's fine. We'll make sure you get invited to that, Neil, as well, and Graham as well. So Ben, sorry to keep you waiting.
Yeah, thank you. Could I make a plea? You know, I come from a public sector background. You guys have obviously been using Zoom and Minty and whatever intensely over the last year. Community and voluntary organisations, people come and go. Like, I certainly will not be involved with Castle Rock Community Association and the project for the 5 years that is set out. So could you bear that in mind, that, you know, you guys quite rightly are using all these techniques now, and that for maybe people in the community and voluntary sector, just to get up to speed with them takes some time. So could you create some form of a library or a resource archive that people could, as people come and go from organizations, they could in their own time go in and have a look and see how to participate in a Zoom meeting? You know, I had never heard of Minty until today. You know, and it would mean that it would be much easier if people could have a look at it in their own time. And you know, as always, if something new is introduced, there can be a sort of reticence about using it. And the profile we have in the community association, and we're desperately trying to change the profile, and Caroline's coming on board, and we're delighted with that. But all, you know, I'm one of the younger members, I'm 64. So if you are meaningfully going to engage with the community and voluntary sector, you've got to appreciate they're coming from a different background to yourselves who are working with this sort of technology and so forth every day because it's your job.
Yeah, it's a good point, that, Ben. And we do actually have some instructions on sort of, is this your first time using Zoom? Is this your first time using Menti? And we can do so. We actually should have sent some of that out in advance of this workshop in hindsight. So that's a good point. Yeah, we'll certainly do that. That's no problem. I think we've done workshops since the lockdown with groups who aren't so familiar with online meetings and things like that. With some elderly communities up in northwest Scotland recently, and I think once people get over that first, as you said, that first hesitancy of, oh, it's something new, because we're all a bit hesitant with new technology, but I think once you get over that first thing, it goes okay. But as you say, it's making that first step seem a bit less, not intimidating, you know what I mean, though. As you say, it can be off-putting. So yeah, that's a good point. I'll note that, and we'll make sure we forewarn people of that in future. Yeah,
great, thank you. Laura,
do you want to wrap up?
Yes, yeah. So I believe in August you will be looking at updating delivery plans. So it would be really good when doing that, if you can think about the sorts of ways you're going to evidence some of your outputs and outcomes and document those, and perhaps start having a look at some of the templates and the spreadsheet for recording activities as well, and how you can integrate that in with your plans and processes, sort of at that review stage of your delivery plans. And if there is any questions, like we've said before, we are here to help. If there's a particular output that you're just not sure how you're going to monitor it, then please contact us directly, and we can help support you with that as you come to review delivery plans and going forward as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. Hope you found it useful, and I'm sure we will see you lots in the future.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was brilliant.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers, Paul.
See you, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.